welcome to Cyflin. In this video, we're going to be talking about user research, and this is the last piece of the puzzle before we can start thinking about what the structure of your website is going to look like. And before we do that, it's really important that we consider who your users are and what they're trying to achieve. Now, there are two types of user research that we can undertake. One's not ideal and one is ideal. So the not ideal one, and what we've done today, is we're going to undertake some user research with users in mind, but we're not going to actually talk to real users. But the best way to undertake user research, if you can, is find real users who are going to really be using your product or service or whatever, and ask them questions to help understand how you can help them solve their problem. And so there's a big difference between those two things. One's building with them in mind, and the other one is kind of talking to them. So if you can't ask them personal questions, and if you can't get in front of them, you can still find value in considering who they are and where they fit in. And there are three real key things we're trying to understand with user research. Who are they? Where do they fit in, and what are their goals? Now, we want to understand who they are so we can connect with them a little bit better. What's their name? What do they do? What's their situation? As an example, you could have someone called Keith, who is a stay-at-home dad who's studying to be a teacher. His partner might work as an engineer and he might have 2 young kids. He could be a keen hiker and he likes to take his family on weekend nature walks. If this guy had feet problems, then this could be an ideal persona for us because, he's a hiker. He likes to take his family on walks, but unfortunately, he can't enjoy that stuff at the moment because of his wide feet and all the shoes that he can find at all the big shoe places or hiking places, they don't fit his feet. But we also want to understand, where do they fit in? How old are they? Are they old? Are they young? Do we have a demographic that we can kind of look at in our audience and say, hey, well, we've got an older audience, so maybe we should make sure that our imagery is more aligned to older people, or younger people, so that those older people kind of see their younger selves in that imagery. And if it's a fitness thing, then that could be ideal, and we could still target towards older people, but through seeing kind of that youthfulness, that thing that they really want to obtain, we could have a really, really compelling story. And what are their goals is kind of that last one. So if you can't get in front of real users as well, this will get you the most value. What are their goals when using or looking for your product? And we really want to think critically about this, because if we understand what their goals are, or we can think really critically about what their goals are and what they want the product or service to achieve for them, then we can start thinking in a bit more detail, again, adding to these layers around how we can cater or tailor our messaging and our imagery and our process and our experience for them. And so if we can ask questions, or even if we can't, there's some things that we want to also kind of think about as well, like do we think they've tried to engage a similar service or product before? What did that look like? What might they find hard with that product? What might they find easy? What were they trying to do? Do we think, what do we think they might like to see change with the product? And what is one kind of big thing that they might look for when engaging with this product or service? And if we kind of remember back to our competitor research as well, if we're not able to talk to real users, then we can think about what our experience was and be empathetic towards what a user might find hard. On a shoe website, I think about that tiny text that we saw. If we made that text bigger and we had an older audience, maybe things would be easier for them to read and understand and engage. And so we want to kind of use this stuff to create something that we call a persona. And so what I've created here is a persona, and this is Tom. And let's just assume that this is a real user. And so we found out that we've really spoken to. So this is Tom, and for this example here, we're going to assume that Tom's a real user that we've spoken to. So Tom is an English actor who started a few films here and there. He's in his early 20s, lives a pretty active lifestyle, no dependents, university qualified, so he's pretty onto it. And he has used our service before, so he agreed to answer some questions. And those questions that we asked him were, have they tried to engage our service before? What was hard about it? What did they find easy? What were they trying to do? All those sorts of things. And what we found out was that he's tried to buy sneakers that fit his wide feet from department stores before, but his frustration was that they had a really limited stock in trendy styles, specifically, trendy styles that fit a wide feet. And because he's on the go, he's happy to buy online as long as they have a way to work out the right measurements. His biggest frustration is when his shoe sizing doesn't include a width, so he'd love to be able to search by size and width, which would let him quickly see products that fit him, and it'd make it a lot easier. We also found out that through talking to Tom, he uses Facebook to connect with his family and Instagram to keep up to date with his interests, and he really likes to read National Geographic. So we kind of have a pretty good picture of Tom. Now, another profile that we've created is potentially something that we actually haven't been able to spoke to before. So Sandra, she's a semi-retired school teacher. She lives in Auckland, New Zealand. She works part-time as a school reliever and enjoys being active. So, we're kind of thinking about someone who might potentially have some orthopedic or feet problems, someone that's a bit older, someone that's not necessarily overweight per se, but they're aging. It's harder for them to kind of get around. Their mobility might be questionable. So we're assuming she hasn't used our service before, though recently has potentially been advised about a foot condition, so she should consider some specialist shoes. So now she kind of searches for the website, and like people that we've spoken to, Sandra, went to some department stores and found that, there were options. They were mainly sneakers and they didn't look or feel like casual shoes. She doesn't want to be considered one of these people that is having to wear these orthotics or these ugly shoes. She's looking for a store with more variety. And unfortunately, she tends not to shop online, as she prefers to try a shoe on before buying it first. She did mention, however, or we could maybe assume, that an easy return feature could help address that concern. If she got the shoes, she didn't like them, she doesn't need them urgently, she can return them. And she also reads Women's Weekly. She likes to keep up to date with her friends and family on Facebook, and she uses Pinterest for her baking inspiration. So perhaps we can find some opportunities there to market to Sandra. And so, if we think about kind of what we've learned from these things here, we can kind of already start to think of 3 things that we could do, if we were doing that shoe website that we can kind of use to create some sort of point of difference that really considers our users. One of those is, bring in more style. As we kind of heard, or we think, from our user experience, we might find that many physical stores have a pretty limited supply of the specialist footwear. So our store could stock more styles, with that orthopedic issue in mind, to give users more options and some better fitting options. I mean, what fitting options did we see in the store that we were kind of looking at? Perhaps if we've got a problem with width in our shoes, then let's provide better fitting options, and that can be a point of difference. We help make sure that you find the right fit in the first place with some really simple measurement options. And again, make returns easy. So not only is it easy to find a shoe that looks like the style that you want and will probably fit, but if we make the returns really easy, then it might almost be something that we can do to try and make it a bit of a try before you buy type service here, just before a department store where you can walk in, you can try something on first. So hopefully you can kind of see that overarching value where considering your users at the very least starts to add a lot of value to the way that we think about how we can present some of our content and our service to our users. So the next thing we're going to move into is actually literally planning our website and start thinking about the pages, the structure, how people are going to get from point A to point B, and really start to put things together in some sort of logical order.